we'll start, if you don't mind. We'll go that way, counterclockwise.
Brian Robichaud.
Jessica Robichaud.
Samantha Mason.
Mary Lou McLean.
Carrie Wilson.
Bill Giver.
Dick Peckham.
Tom Hill.
Rose Zacher.
Rich Zacher. Ernie Brown.
Gary Ciccarone.
Jim Freeman.
Diana Peckham.
Bill Nelson. And one more coming in. And who's the person behind the camera?
Must be guessed.
Ed Comeau.
Okay. Come on in.
There's three of us.
Good. Good room.
1, 2.
2, 3.
As long as you don't want to sit together. No, gotta be up there. You don't get the comfortable seats. You get it down here with everybody else. We're bound to round 2 of what our original meeting was about, to get ideas for next door. I've heard from different people, and wow, it's caused all sorts of ideas floating out there. I know Gary came to the selectmen's meeting, made some thoughts to get out there. So we need to see if we can progress any on this and go from there. And we have one other late entry. Craig, you're here. So, anybody have thoughts since the last meeting? Mary Lou?
Certainly. Well, I did, just to bring the people that weren't at the last selectmen's meeting up to date, I did contact Plan NH, who are the people that would probably be recommended by the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance if the town wanted to do a charrette. The charrette season for this year, all the grants have been given out, and they were finished in March, and we'll be conducting charrettes from July through November. And so if we wanted to do one, it would probably have to be put off until next year, unless the town was, what I saw on the website, was a price of $5,000. As I mentioned at the meeting, I feel pretty confident I could get part, if not all of that money in a grant. I know a couple of places that are asking me to put in for grant money that are local businesses, but not sure that's the way the town wants to go. So I think, as far as I'm concerned, I think tonight the important focus needs to be on, Gary was nice enough to offer his services to get us prices. I think we need to come up with a list of what we'd like prices on.
We're ready further. Ed, would you like to comment on the charrette thing?
Yeah, I believe that the...
Ed spoke to me and he had some thoughts, so...
Yeah, I just believe that it's a town asset. I think we need to do it as a town. I think it's important that we have ownership of it, and I just don't particularly like outsiders coming in to do anything. I think we should do it as a town.
Do you know of anybody who was qualified to help do that?
I believe we were talking about Marsh doing it.
Dr. Marsh was one. I know you said you had some experience in doing this.
I've never done a charrette before.
Okay.
But I would certainly participate in it.
Anyway, that's thrown out there. Just
Yep.
do we need to pay $5,000, or we could do a lot with $5,000? That's just out there. Gary, you ready to cause some?
Okay, yeah, let's get into it. My idea here is not to deprecate Salmon Falls, but I unfortunately have to do that. Simply because we can't take the approach that they've proffered there, because the first thing they didn't do, I went under there, we ripped the plastic down that Ansero did a great job putting up. We ripped it down from the sill. Evidently nobody's done that, nobody had looked at the foundation, and that is really engineering 101. I don't understand why they didn't look at that, because there's problems there. And
So could you specify whether the problems are with the schoolhouse or with the townhouse?
no, we're talking strictly schoolhouse at the moment.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I haven't gone under the townhouse, and I'm not doing that at the moment, because the structural problems over there seem to be the priority at the moment, because the townhouse is supposedly unsafe. But anyway, Jim and I crawled under there.
The schoolhouse is unsafe?
The town, well, it's the Salmon Falls, I can read it to you. It says we shouldn't gather on the floor back there because it's structurally unsound.
Of the schoolhouse?
Of the schoolhouse.
Yes, you had said townhouse, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I meant to say the schoolhouse, I beg your pardon. Now, We went under there, there's about 5, maybe 6, you know, there's tree trunks for floor joists in there between 3 and 5 feet apart, depends on where they are. They're mortise tendon into a carrying beam down the middle. The powder post beetles have done a job on 4 or 5 of them. Everything else is sound. There's no rot on the subfloor. However, we pulled the plastic down from the foundation. The entire side foundation were covered with the plastic that spread out on the floor. It was stapled all the way around, and nobody's looked at that since Dancero did it, which is when?
2 years ago, I believe.
Did he do it before Salmon Falls came or after Salmon Falls came?
After.
Okay. The foundation, we pulled it down and we looked at it. The foundation is tipping out. The bottom courses of blocks are sound and intact. The top courses of blocks have a 1/2 inch gap on the inside face, which means that when they probably set the building, and there's no sense trying to spend a lot of time determining why this happened, it happened. If you sight the far side of the sill of the townhouse, you see an 8-inch, 6 to 8 inch bow out. Thing swings way out. The reason for that is when they set it, probably, and who cares why, the blocks on the top tipped out and the bond was broken. And that's probably a couple of dozen blocks on the top 2 courses. Absolutely, they need to be reset. I don't know why, and this has been like that forever. You can tell that just didn't happen because the bottom courses are fine, so the footing didn't shift. And the stucco that was applied to the outside face is not cracked where the bond is. The stucco was put on the block, on the outside, and it remains intact. So consequentially, the block has been tipped like that for God only knows how many years, probably 40, when they set the building. But anyway, it's irrelevant, because if you're going to fix the floor structure of this building, there's another little thing that has occurred simply because of that. Because that thing is blown so far out on the side, the way these joists, if you want to call them that, tree trunks with bark on them, some of them not, were mortise tendon into the carrying beam, and they mortise tendon into the sill beam. A mortise tendon is a joint that is made with a male reduced piece of wood that slides into a female aperture on the beam, and that's how it's put together. These have obviously separated where the sill has moved out 6 inches, and they've pulled loose. Now, nobody knows what happened inside that aperture in the carrying beam where it's pulled loose from. Whether a wooden peg or something fell behind there, so just sucking the thing back together may and may not work. You don't know till you try, but no matter what happens, that thing should be pulled together as tightly as possible and very easily accomplished. I'm going to put all this stuff on paper. I haven't had time to do that, and so I'm going to wing it tonight with some thumbnail sketches and some verbalizations of what the problem is. With threaded rods and steel plates mortised into the outside of the sill plate, not very expensive and not very difficult to do. You mortise the plate to the outside of the sill beam. After you take the siding off, then you put the siding back on and it's totally hidden. And a turnbuckle on a threaded rod on the inside, and 2 of them would do the job over there based on where this problem is. And it would pull those 2 sills together and lock them in place for all time. I mean, as long as we're all going to live and our kids and grandkids. So that would solve that problem and keep it from spreading further. That's item 1. Then the building has to be raised a 1/4 inch on that side, 24, 25, I didn't count it because it doesn't matter. Top course, 2 course blocks have to be pulled and reset in mortar, and then the building set on them. Probably this happened when they had the building, they carried it, the floor was heaving up and down because they moved it over the road, and when they set it on the foundation and dropped it, it pushed the foundation out at that time, and it stood there, so they said, there were no building codes, there were no building inspectors, there was no nothing back then, so that's what we've got. Before you restructure the floor on a bunch of loose concrete blocks, you really need to reset them. Not a giant problem, not difficult to do. That's the foundation thing, and that should be in there. It's not in there. That's where you start. Unsound foundation means the entire structure is as sound as the foundation is. So, also, warehouse loading is 125 pounds per square foot You don't need that in a meeting hall that will hold an occupancy load of probably 50 to 60 people. It's 15 square feet per person, and that's what that amounts to in that back room. And even an additional 30 people wouldn't require 125 pound per square foot occupancy load rating. It only requires 60 live, 20 dead load. And the dead load is the weight of the structure itself, and the live load is the weight of fixtures and occupants. So, to fix that, all that's there could be left there. It doesn't have to be removed, all those tree trunks, with the exception of the ones that have the powder post beetles, and I'd get rid of them. Or go in there and scalp away all the rot to the good wood, just so that you don't have to rip them out, because that tends to disturb the subfloor. None of the subfloor is rotten. We were all through that place, and all those boards are sound. The place has really fared well, considering it's a couple hundred years old, been parked here for 60. It's not in bad shape, except the 5 joists that have the powder post beetle rot. I mean, it's pretty deep. It's in about an inch, and you can rub it with something, and away comes the powder. I would still suggest that the wood is replaced, not replaced, but sistered with 2x12s, 16 inches on center. What's in that thing, that report, is that there's a laminate beam underneath the new floor joists, proposed new floor joists, to carry them in the middle. Well, one span on the far side is 9 feet, and the span on this side of the building is 13 feet. Between the carrying beam down the center, which exists, that these floor joists are plugged into, they have on their plan a micro lam beam underneath those floor joists in the center. Absolutely unnecessary. You can get the loading without doing any of that. Those micro lam beams are $15 a foot. We spend $500 to $800 just buying the beams. Then we have to put piers in. Not necessary. Engineering wise, if we were doing a warehouse loading, we would have to come up with that, because warehouse loading, except pallets of storage stuff, much heavier than 80 people. And you're not going to put more than 80 people in that little building at one time anyway. So, and that should be done with pressure treated southern yellow pine, which is much more structurally, has much more structural integrity than, say, the cheap spruce. And it's not terribly expensive. The total material bill to replace that floor structural system underneath, it's not replace, add to what is there with the appropriate hangers and fasteners, is about $1,500 for material. It's not a lot of money. Now we have to come up with, I'm going to come up with these things. It was only the other day I was under there. I just didn't have any time this weekend. I'm going to write all this up, and I'm going to do some drawings. Their drawing says 1/4 inch scale. It's really only 1/8 inch scale, and it should be 1/4 inch scale, so it's readable and legible. There should be some drawings on how to execute this, because there's nothing there. I brought a set of plans to show you what a set of plans really needs to look like to get a good bid from somebody. You have to specify exactly what you want them to, not just throw them, well, we need this down to give us a price, because there's some things that have to be done to fix this. Like the building the sills have to be sucked back in as far as you can get them, and then leave it at that, because if something is in those holes where I told you the mortise and the tenon come together, you're not going to pull it any further. And if you rip the whole thing out to clean out the hole, then you detach it from the subfloor, and you create a little bit of a problem there, because you don't want to go up on top and nail too much of the floor through into the new framing. The new framing is basically going to support what's there so that it'll take the weight. It doesn't have to be attached through the flooring upstairs. Then you're going to nail through your finished flooring, and then you might as well rip it all up and nail through the subflooring, then put the finished flooring on. We don't need to go through that. That's much more expensive and unnecessary. Then, the other thing I wouldn't do, the recommendations there are get rid of the vents down there. Listen, this is in great dry condition under there, and those vents on either side are a good portion of the reason for that. Nothing is rotted. It's been there 60 years. Why shoot the horse if it's still going? Leave it alone. You have 2x12s being installed. What's in there now is an 8 1/4 inch carrying beam. You can have special Tico joist hangers that will hold a 2x12 under that floor just fine to the carrying beam and notch it into the sill. Then insulate it with conventional fiberglass insulation. Like I said, there's no condensation on the underside of the floor, there's no rot. Conventional fiberglass, I'd recommend foil face instead of craft face, and the insulation face would be up with the moisture barrier up, but that stuff doesn't rot either. And it really won't entrain moisture. Everything would be wet under there. In fact, we found water at the base by the door from the leaks that were there. It ran down the plastic and gathered in a puddle, but everything else was relatively dry. So there isn't a tremendous moisture problem there. There'd be an awful situation with rot. 60 years sitting there, back here, had there been a problem, it would be evident, and it's not. And I didn't take any pictures, but I will if people want to see it. That's the floor. And that's what could be done, and I'm going to come up with what it's going to cost to do that. Quantify it. I'm not going to do drawings until I hand you, this is what the costs are going to be with a material list on an Excel spreadsheet. So, and that'll have labor and remarks and all that stuff in it, because that's easy for me to do. To do drawings, if somebody says, we don't want to do this, waste of my time. Once you know the quantities, the costs, then you can really make a great decision on whether or not you want to go ahead and do it. That's what you need to be able to go do it. Or not do it, demolish it, whatever choice the town makes. But I'd just as soon not do the drawings on how to fabricate this stuff until the town makes a decision. Then, yeah, I'm going to donate them. Because it's not that big of a deal, but I don't have a lot of time to throw away on something that's not going to be productive.
Before you go any further, anybody have a question on this part that they want to ask? Throw it out together.
Is that a crawl space or is that a full?
It's crawl.
How deep, 4 feet?
No.
It's tapered.
It's 4 feet at the bottom, 2 feet at the top. Their recommendation is to excavate out some of the dirt. It's basically sandy fill, it's dry. D'Angelo did a great job plasticizing the whole place, and there's just no rot under there. There's no structural rot from water. Pardon me?
Some of the dirt was removed
Okay.
when Dansero put the plastic down.
I mean, that's a choice. The town wants to have some more dirt removed, and then add that to the bill for grunt labor to get down there and dig dirt out in 5-gallon pails and take it away.
The taper under there is actually good because all the water ran down to the back side where it can escape.
From the leak.
There are some puddling where there are dips in the plastic. That's where you have your major puddling. But the rest of it is dried and it's run off to the area that it should be going to.
Okay, that's number one.
Wait a minute, hold on.
Okay.
Any other questions on what he's presented so far? Ernie, anybody jumping in? Brian? Rich? Greg?
That's
You're on. Go.
number one. Okay, the walls are structurally fine. How well they're insulated, well, that's another story. And I haven't dug into them to see how much space there is to blow insulation in, which is extremely inexpensive to do. If there's space and if we can blow insulation in, or maybe it's already been done, that's an item, but I'm not going there at the moment. That's the walls, and that's really all that can be said about them, other than what kind of shape the windows are in and what their air infiltration integrity is. Nobody knows at this point, because I haven't tested them, and these folks didn't. There is another issue, and I'm going to read this to you. And then we'll go there. I gotta find it. Okay. Attic insulation is currently in fiberglass insulation. We recommend additional insulation be added to increase our value to. No, that's not it. Wait a minute.
Attic insulation has been added.
No, the townhouse. Yeah.
In the townhouse.
No, we're not talking about that. We're in the schoolhouse mode right now.
Somebody, while he's looking that up, somebody was going to make a suggestion on the demolition cost of it. How do you?
They did give an estimate of 8,000.
8,000, okay. So if that was demolished?
Well, that's what the solid waste supervisor for the town of Milton currently. I would probably be able to get it done cheaper and just as well.
Okay.
I really have to find this.
Other avenues that the town could use that would probably be a bit cheaper.
Okay.
I have to find this because it's pretty important.
So what are you looking for?
I'm looking for the portion that says that the attic construction is well done. I gotta tell you something, and they took 9 pictures of the attic. There's a real situation in the attic. If you're gonna fix this building, I've been up there. I wasn't up there the other day, but I've been up there several times when we were building this building, and the reason is we were gonna have roofers come over and do these buildings, and there were some issues that had to be dealt with, so I went up there. And they took some great pictures here, but there's no bibliography and no footnotes anywhere saying what these pictures are relative to. There's 48 pages of pictures and nothing, and 7 pages of text. Anyway, the attic is not well built under any circumstances. Not by today's standards. They certainly were by 1810 standards or whenever the heck that thing was put together. That's what they did. They put it together whatever way they had materials for, and that was it. It's still standing. However, and it's a form of truss. You might say 5 feet apart, there's only half a dozen of them up there, and they took pictures of them. This is great. We got pictures of them, and it's grossly inadequate to the point where that roof is unstable. It just happens to be, we're lucky it's still standing, and quite frankly, that's the truth. There probably was a carrying beam down the middle that they took out and helped fabricate these trusses by slapping 1x3s and 1x10 scabs on some of the supposed truss members up there way back in the 60s after they transported the building there and pulled out any center supports with posts they had to make a sort of a truss that is not legal by today's standards in any way, shape, or form. If Eddie was here, I could ask him what the snow load for Brookfield pounds per foot is. I don't know that. Wolfborough's X, and every town is different, depends on how the state rates it. But anyway, these pictures show what that attic roof is comprised of, and there ain't much up there in terms of trusses to hold that roof up. I mean, all these pictures in here, there's a load of them in the attic, and they don't refer to much here, except it's saying that it's well built, and I'm trying to find where it's well built. I've been up there, it isn't well built. It's a place looking for something to happen, and the way those things work is they're ceiling joists with a truss, and I could draw this a lot better, but I'll explain it, because I would draw this for the sake of the town if we needed it, or will do that if they decide to fix this. A ceiling joist should traverse from one bearing wall to the other at the eaves, and a truss is fabricated with structural connectors that put a structural member from the ridge to the center of the building, and then radians on a simple Howe truss. Bertram Howe designed a truss, it's a simple truss, where the radians would then go to the top chord of the truss, the angled piece of the roof. So you have this webbing up there that structurally holds the whole thing together. That's not there. There's little pieces of stuff that are wood pegged together every 5 feet. It should be 2 feet on center by today's standards. You could go a little further, but the truss gets beefier. And there's boards that go from these 5-foot things across the roof, they're called purlins, that hold boards that are going up the roof vertically instead of sideways, that all the shingles are nailed to. The point is, there's not much there. And the reason that it's still there, I don't know. Pitch of 12 helps. You know, the stuff rolls off, melts off, falls off. If it were a pitch 8, that building would be on the ground. That, and number one, the Homosode is no good. Everybody knows that. It's got to come down, and sheetrock should be applied. Consequently, you're going to pull that down, and you're going to have access to that whole attic from below. It would be a very simple process and very inexpensive, material-wise, less than $2,000, way less, to fabricate trusses in between the things that already exist there, which are not really trusses, they're just sort of trusses. They've held it up, but nobody knows for how long. Trusses could be fabricated with plywood gusset plates. A gusset plate is what holds all these members together in the form of a truss, which would be allowable. They could be engineered, no problem. Normally they have those little metal plates on trusses. I'm sure many people here have seen them. They squish the whole thing together and it holds it together structurally. Plywood plate will do the same job, especially in an existing building and you're refurbishing or increasing the integrity of it structurally. So if you build the trusses in place with framing over, since you're tearing the whole Comeau surface down, you're talking about a week's worth of work, or less, for a few guys to put these trusses in place, and now the integrity of the roof, the foundation, and the walls are up to today's standards. But you really haven't changed the visual appearance of the building in just about any way, except sucking in that little bow outside. So all this can be done, and can be done easily. The insulation can be reused in the attic, and then the bottom cords of the trusses, which are ceiling joists, could be strapped with strapping and then sheetrock applied, and the whole thing would look 10 times better than it looks now and be structurally stable. Those things need to be done before all the other stuff is considered. You want bathrooms here, this there, that there, and the costs need to be determined of those priority items. They're the number one in that schoolhouse. It's got nothing to do with the townhouse. I think, anyway, it's my opinion. They have to be done first. And even Salmon Falls said the floor has to be done, the roof does as well. And the roof should also, if you build the trusses, you no longer have the necessity to pull those walls in with cables. That's another solution. We won't go there. Framing lumber is cheap. It's the cheapest part of any house. And it's very easy to get up in there and fabricate all this because there's nothing there now. It's not like you got to get rid of a whole bunch of crud from 1802. There's nothing there except a lot of insulation and wiring, but it's all going to have to be moved and manipulated. But so there's a cost to that, and we need to assess that. Steve probably really could help with that. And anyway, once those things are done, then everything else can be approached. Bathrooms, this, what you're going to do with the hall. I feel that we can't approach it till we know what it's going to cost to make the structure stable. And I can quantify that and draw it so that any price you get is a quote, not an estimate. An estimate is an open-ended thing where people come in and say, oh, I think I can do it for that. You sign a thing that says estimate at the top, and if it's 50% more or 100% more, and this time you're stuck with the bill. A quote is a quote is a quote. It's a performance thing. It's a legal document. It's a contract, and that's what the job will cost. And if you can't find anybody that wants to bid on it, I know I can get it done for that, because I'm not going to make stuff up. I can't afford to. So, and when I say I can get it done for that, I don't mean by me doing it. I can find the people that will do it. They're out there. I deal with a lot of subcontractors, and they work at a specific rate, except I mentioned the homeowner's price versus the contractor's price last week. You pay double when you're a one-time shot deal. And you wouldn't pay double, but we can get people to do this job under the auspices of a contractor's price. And I'll figure it right out. Do it all the time.
Okay, questions on that? Ed?
I wanted to ask about the foundation again. Could you go a little bit into what the foundation is made of?
It's the only place that's bad is that far side. There's the top two courses, and if you go crawl under there and look, now you can see it. You'll see that the blocks at the top are tipped out quite a few inches.
The cement block, they're not.
The cement blocks, the concrete blocks, and there's a half-inch gap between the top of the mortar on the block below the second course and the bottom of the block where they've tipped out. Now, because this building is squished down on this thing, it hasn't gone anywhere. It's been sitting there for how many years? And it's not a very heavy building, let's face it. It doesn't even weigh 20 tons, 25 tons. But to fix this without addressing that problem is absolutely foolish, because the structural integrity isn't there, and nobody knows what's going to happen 5 years or 8 years down the road. And it's just a matter of resetting concrete blocks. To do that, a little carrying beam has to be set up underneath, and some 10-ton house jacks will pick that building up just a quarter of an inch on that side. Simple process. Reset those blocks, let them sit for a couple of days, drop the building a quarter inch, problem goes away. And probably for all time, because the footing's obviously good, nothing shifted. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So the other thing about that is, then you stucco the outside. You're obviously going to crack the stucco when you pull the blocks back in. It was filled in to look flat when they stuccoed it, because obviously this was done way back. I remember, when did we do the thing? You might remember. When did we do? We hired somebody to do that, fix the foundation, loose blocks and stuff, a number of years ago.
Yeah,
Around 2000.
Okay.
Okay. That's when they applied the stucco.
Okay, obviously those blocks were tipped then because they filled that in nicely and it hasn't cracked, or had it been recent damage, all this stuff would be cracked at the block joint. It's not. But it still needs to be brought back in, especially if you're going to fix the floor. The other benefit of the floor joists, well, because the building's bowed out along that wall, the carrying beam, which is a 6 by 8, I think, you know, numbers, they could be a little off, 7 by 6.5, no. They're sitting a little bit too far out on the foundation. That's why the foundation is blown out. Now, we may not be able to pull that building in enough to put it back in pristine condition like the day they built it back in whatever year. And you really shouldn't try, because sometimes you break things trying to make them right. So the benefit of putting the floor joists in is you're setting a floor joist perpendicular to the carrying walls of the foundation. The bearing walls are always the walls under the eaves, not the gable end. You take the gable end right out and the building still stands. But the floor joists, which run perpendicular, also travel under the carrying beam or attached to the carrying beam too. And the walls above will not just sit on the carrying beam, but also on the top edge of a 2 by 12 floor joist every 16 inches. So that really reinforces the bearing portion of the wall that is in question at the moment, because this is blown out so far over there. So the whole thing is fixable, and not with an enormous amount of difficulty, except it's a little cramped under there, but you know, that could be dealt with. It's a couple of weeks, and that whole floor is all, or
Anybody
less.
else question what he said so far before we go on to the new?
Could you talk a little bit about, I think I heard a carrying beam down the center of the room?
Yeah, there's an 8 by 8 carrying beam down the center, and that's why they specified 2 by 8 floor joists to sister up or put in there. And if you go to 2 by 8s, they're structurally inadequate for the loading requirements. So then they bought two $800 LVLs and threw them under the center of the 2 by 8s that are going to be the new floor joist, which is crazy, because now you got to put concrete piers in all to carry the LVLs. Laminated veneer lumber, it's a beam, fabricated engineered beam. Instead of using 2 by 8, 2 by 8s for the floor joist, use 2 by 12s now. The structure is adequate for the loading without putting this $1,500 worth, and got a lot more labor too, and piers, worth of lumber and materials in there, out in the middle of these spans, not needed anymore.
Are you suggesting that you take the floor joists and run them all the way through?
No, you just run them from the center beam to the sill on both sides. It's 13 feet 2 inches on one side and 9 feet 9 inches on the other side.
And that's where I'm confused, because you're, Salmon Falls is suggesting beef up that center carrying beam.
No, they're not. Really, not at all.
I
What do you,
The center carrying beam is just fine, and they say that.
I think their main reaction
I'm going to show you. I'll show you.
was that
They are, Gary.
these joists are set approximately 36 inches on center. And you notice as you walk over the floor, there is a little bit of give to the floor as you're walking on it. There's not enough
I can build, but I can't operate
and
these.
as Gary was mentioning, if you have a larger crowd, you need more weight per square foot capacity. So if you put these joists in 16 on center, you accomplish that capacity, and you narrow the distances between the joists.
one half of that beam is on the sill.
Oh,
The other half of
All
the
right, we
beam
got a
is...
drawing. He's
Go
no
ahead.
artist.
here it is.
Go ahead.
Okay. Thanks. All right, here's the carrying beam.
Yep.
Down the middle. Okay? It's approximately an 8 1/4 inch square. Very beefy. And it's all good wood. No rock. Concrete piers have been poured in 3 locations to shorten the span between so it can carry a big floor load that size beam. And what's in here are a bunch of tree trunks, and they're mortised into the beam. Here's the beam. If you look at it this way, this is a sectional view. In other words, you're looking at the end of the beam like this. There's a hole here into the beam, chiseled in many years ago, and they took this tree trunk floor joist, flattened one to the top, which is going to be where they set the floor, and they make a square chunk on the end, and they shove it into this hole and put a wooden peg in from underneath, And now you got a beam coming from here going out to the sill. Here's the sill out here. Here's the carrying beams. They're all on the same level, and these tree trunks go. Now, the idea is to take 2x12s and put them every 16 inches, and you might screw that up a little bit because these tree trunks are getting away. You might have one at 18 inches, you might have one, but the next one will be at 9 because the tree trunks, and we want to take that out because we'll really wreck the, you know, the floor will get, there's no way to reattach the subfloor without ripping up the floor. We don't want to go there. So you might have one 9 inches apart, and the next one will be 19 inches, doesn't matter. The rating will be still the same in terms of, and there's also going to be, it's a big tree trunk in the middle of there too. That's still going to be there, so, you know, it all works. And these things all go here, and then you use a special kind of Tico hanger, which has a little strap on the top of it. It comes down, and the hanger goes like this, and the new floor joist sets right into this hanger, and this little thing is chiseled into the top of the beam, so that the load is supported not just by the top of the beam, but it's also nailed into the side of the beam. I would specify that, they didn't. And then on the sills, so I don't know if you understand these drawings. Maybe you are, maybe you're not. Do you understand this thing about the plug-in thing? So these floor joists now would go like this, 2x12s, all the way through here, all the way here, here. They go from the sill here and here to the carrying beam in the center. Then, it just so happens that here's the concrete block wall, and coming to the, and on top of it's a beam that's carrying, that these tree trunks are plugged into along the outside edge of the building. Now you're going to take a 2x12 and run it here. Well, actually you're going to notch it right here. You're also going to use a joist hanger here as well to make sure you attach it firmly because you can't nail it through from the outside. Now this 2x12 goes and it lays on top of the block wall. And it's also attached to this.
You're going to notch the 2x12?
Yeah, of course. And you're only going to notch it out an inch and a half. You're not going to destroy the structural integrity of it. Anyway, then that goes from here on the sill to that, and the whole system, you know, it's slick. It works. No carrying beams necessary yet.
What's the diameter of those tree trunks?
Oh, it varies.
Yeah.
Well, I've got 6
roughly.
inches, 9 inches.
Oh, okay, okay.
I mean, it just,
Not 12
and some of them,
inches.
and somebody obviously pulled one out way back when though, because it's dimensional lumber. It's nominal lumber, not dimensional. They've actually got really 2 1/4 by 8. They probably replaced a couple of tree trunks that really crapped out and threw some, you know, rough sawn timbers in here and there. Not too many.
So my question was,
Yeah.
the carrying beam in the center,
Yep.
that's still structurally good?
Oh, perfectly fine.
Thank you.
And underneath, and they're 8 feet apart. These are 8 feet apart, these new cement piers. Somebody put a form up and poured in a footing, and who knows when. It could have been when they moved the thing here. Probably did, and they filled this 12-inch by 12-inch form up with concrete underneath this carrying beam, and there it sits, and everything's fine. Never going anywhere. More than adequate for what we're talking. It's actually way overrated than way more than necessary, and stronger than the floor system itself would require. So
With the proper joisting, that center carrying beam should be able to handle whatever, you know, we have for capacity. We have 40, 50 people easily.
Any other questions on this part of the project? And we're still in the schoolhouse.
you are still in the schoolhouse because you all got to make a decision. The town, basically, has to make a decision whether we want to fix it or throw it away, right? Or just let it sit there like it is for the rest of time. I just want to, this is part of CIP, and that's what our agenda is on the planning board this year. So, well, let's get it done.
You threw a number out for material for that floor.
$1,500.
Should we give, is that a good number?
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, you know, if lumber goes up next week, it'll be $1,580.
I mean, okay, but it's not just a, it's a good number.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I multiplied the number of floor joists by, they're $10 a piece. Well, not really. The ones on this side are about 9, and the ones on this side are about 13. And you multiply them, it comes up to, I think it was, I don't know, $980. Then you've got to buy a whole load of special floor joists, nails, and et cetera, et cetera. That's the materials only.
Yep, I understand.
Okay. Yeah, that's what it costs.
Now, how about when you get to the roof part, what is your
right.
potential cost for that?
Well,
We're just talking materials.
I'm guessing right now, I'm just guessing, but you don't need heavy members up there. See, I'm using pressure-treated lumber in the basement, why not? It's stronger than the spruce junk that the lumber company has to offer. Southern Yellow Pine is and that's what they pressure treat. It's got twice the structural, and it's almost Douglas fir. So why use a lesser value lumber just because it saves you $106? You know, it's hardly worth it. So the roof, we were talking about that before. What's up there now, these pictures? There's some goofy kind of assembly at the top, which is, it varies in thickness and structure. It's considered ridgepole. And then there's these beams that go down to the stuff that carries across. Here's the bearing wall underneath on both sides. And then there is a beam that goes up every 5 feet or so. Don't hold me to that because I didn't measure it, but it's probably close. And then they got these spindly little things every 5 feet only now. Today, if you build a building, you're mandatory you're going to put those things with conventional framing 2 feet on center. 5 feet's inadequate. Back in the old days, they put them 5 feet apart and run these things called purlins across this way. Then run the boards on the top this way, and that's how they did it. They didn't have plywood sheets. Nowadays, they got plywood, so they just put 2 feet on center with the rafters, and then they put plywood across those things and stagger the seams so that the structural integrity is there. They've got these little spindly things going up like this. Now that's supposedly a truss, but you need, this is what, 40 feet long? You would need 20 of them. There's maybe 5. It's just not there. I don't care. They don't even, they said it's well built, but it isn't well built. It's still there though. I mean, you want to crap shoot and leave it alone, you can do that. But you're probably looking at another, $700 worth of lumber, $800 worth of lumber to rebuild, to put a floor, put one of these trusses every 2 feet. And make plywood gusset plates, you go up there with a screw gun and screws, and you screw the gusset plates on. What a gusset plate is now you're going to build one of these trusses out of a, believe it or not, a 2x4. Because that's all you need on a 26-foot building. This is a 2x4, and this is a 2x4. Not very expensive. Then you have these in there, and they're 2x4s. Now what you do, this would be a 2x6, I'm sorry. These will be 2x4, because now your span is only 4 feet. You don't have much distance between structural connections. Then you take a piece of plywood and make a gusset plate like this, because you normally see those little metal plates you see on the trusses, but if you can use a plywood, use a big piece. And you put those things here, and you fabricate the whole thing. You could use the metal plates if you wanted. You could buy Tico plates and screw them in, but plywood would work just fine. And you put these gusset plates up in there, now you get a whole real truss roof, the whole length of the place, and it'll stay there forever. Well, that's a long time, but it'll stay there. We'll all be dead, and so will our progeny that will remember us. So,
Any questions on
that's not much money. And to fabricate it, I mean, you spend a week doing this? So you got to figure out, and there's got to be money for profit. People don't just work for $25 an hour. Although, but there's profit margin for a contractor and all that. But this isn't like the job of the year. Holy, how are we going to get this done? It's pretty simple. Yeah.
Right?
Was there or is there any evidence that there was ever collar beams going straight
across? No. Nothing. In fact, some of this stuff broke and snapped in the trip, and they scanned one by something. And just old pieces of, whoever had a scrap in their garage donated it when they moved this here. I mean, I'm sure that's what it was. And they nailed it together with 10 penny nails, and okay, we're done. Throw the homicide on, and they went home. And there the schoolhouse is. Now we can leave it that way or fix it. Yeah.
Your collar beams, they usually didn't put them in. What they would do is use the ceiling going between the attic and the last floor, and they would run the boards from the outside walls all the way across, and that would hold the building together.
Well, that's what you have to do anyway with a truss, same thing.
Right, but does this have, when you take your homosote down, that's in the ceiling, was that put on originally?
The homosote?
Yeah.
In 1810? I don't think so.
Well, they might have had something and this replaced it.
Well, the plaster fell down in transit, I'm sure.
Okay, so you should have you should have boards that are going across the entire length.
Oh, yeah.
The entire width. So
Well,
that
Are
acts
there-
as your collar tie.
Well, that's the collar tie.
Yeah.
Well, a collar beam, actually not a beam. A collar beam is anything above the wall level. At the wall level, it's a ceiling joist or a bottom chord of a truss, and anywhere on up is the collar beam, technically. But anyway, it doesn't matter. These things are probably up, down, and all over the place. That's, the ones that every 5 feet that have one of these beams that go up to the ridge area will be rigid and probably in the same plane, or reasonably. The rest of them are probably up, down, and around because it's 200-year-old wood, and it's 24 feet long, and God only knows. If you turn each one of those into a truss, then you can string the thing and get them all exactly the same in the middle. And then you can put strapping on the bottom of all of the bottom cords of these things and throw your sheetrock up and you're done. Re-insulate, put insulation, the same old insulation that's in there. It's fiberglass, it's good. If you want to throw more up on top, you can do that. But, you know, you take this homoso down, now you're working indoors, off scaffolding, piece of cake. Not a job that a contractor will run away from, going, not me. So
Okay, so we can move on. Anything else?
that's the roof. Those things got to be done. After that, it's all up for grabs. I'm going to price it out. I'll do drawings, but first I'm going to quantify it. I'll give you that. I just haven't got the time at the moment. I'll be quick, though. I won't waste a lot of time.
All right, part B. Anybody, no other questions? Where do you go from here?
Okay, there's more. Okay, there's a thing in there where they make recommendations to change both furnaces to LP, and that's fine. You've got 2 furnaces over there, and the reason for that is one furnace is heating the townhouse, and they got to put another one in because they didn't have enough BTU delivery to do the schoolhouse. So they got another sister, and they put it in there, and it's less than BTU. And it's probably 70% accurate at this point because of the age of the technology. If it's that, it might be 68, it might be 74, who knows? But the AFUE, which is the efficiency of the unit, is very low. And you got a bunch of ductwork underneath, and you're not going to be able to put this floor system in with the ductwork in place. Impossible. Has to be taken out. That was another item that would cost money. By the time you take it out and put it back in, you're going to pay a mechanic of some kind, plumber's rate, $60 an hour for a guy and his helper plus profit to come in for HVAC guy and do this. My recommendation would be insulate the heck out of the floor, insulate the heck out of the ceiling, fix the walls where you can insulation-wise. Actually, I'll bore you with this anyway. The best insulation in the world is a vacuum or an empty space. When they put fiberglass in a cavity of a wall, it's not because it stops heat. It doesn't stop heat. It has nothing to do with heat whatsoever. What it does is it stops air movement in the bay, which is what creates convection. Air movement in the bay, when you have cold surface on the outside and a warm surface on the inside, the air on the outside of the wall cools and goes down the bay, and the air on the inside is warm, so it warms back up and goes inside, and it keeps doing this all day long. Unless the vacuum. Vacuums don't do that because there's no air. So consequently, then the air takes the heat from the inside, goes up to the outside wall, sends the heat through the wall, and that's why you put insulation to stop air movement, period. No other reason. It does not make heat stop going through things, because the heat will start going through the insulation and transmit, telegraph right through, no matter what anyway. It just stops the air movement. It slows the whole process down. That's why you put insulation. Now, those walls may not have room for insulation, but if they're sealed up really well, and a lot of caulking is done to windows and stuff like that, you're going to get a value that's really going to be pretty adequate today. The biggest culprit is the ceilings. That's where most of the heat goes. Heat rises, cold doesn't go down. So I would suggest that you throw the whole boiler out of there. If you were running one boiler for the whole place, that's reasonably efficient because you're going to burn oil in one unit to heat everything. Now we're burning oil in 2 units to heat 2 places, which is crazy because they're both so inefficient because they're old. What you want to do with the townhouse heat, that's another story. I'm not going to go there right now, but with that place, you would pay a plumber, I'm guessing close to, or a good HV guy. You don't want idiots in there. You want a mechanic that does this area to come in, remove and replace the ductwork so that it's good. and it's done professionally, that's probably $1,000. They have the guy in there for doing that, so I guarantee, especially if he has to replace it, because who knows what kind of shape it's gonna come out in when you remove it to put the floor in. If he's gotta replace it, it'll be $2,000, maybe $1,800. I don't know that yet, I'd have to figure that out. Why do that at all? Throw that furnace out the window, get rid of it, send it down to scrap, insulate the place, and put another one of those in that schoolhouse, and it will do the job. That's $1,400, $1,500 installed. And you're heating the schoolhouse to whatever you want to set your temperature at. I know it's not conducive to historical aesthetics, but it's $1,500 install versus several thousand, and I'm not going to go there right now if you're going to put a new unit in there. Why burn the oil 2 times in the building to keep this thing warm? It's price of it, it's crazy. Especially these things are 96% efficient now versus 70% efficient. So BTUs are BTUs. I don't care what you. So I would say throw the ductwork away, not put it back. You save money there. Put a different type of heating plant in there, divorced from the one that's there, and it saves the town a ton of money installation, and guaranteed it will run cheaper than what's there now after you replace all the old ductwork. That's a recommendation. I'm not going to tell everybody what to do, but that's what I would do. Okay. Yeah.
How does the square footage of this room compare to the schoolhouse?
Oh, the school, okay, the schoolhouse.
I think it's pretty close.
Yeah.
Fairly close. Yeah.
Different dimensions.
Oh, let's see, that's 20, inside, it's 25 by 36, so, you know, 900? You know, oh, that would do the job.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Especially where it's
Especially if you get rid of the, you know, why you lose air. The wind blows by the building, it creates a vacuum on the leeward side, and it sucks the air through the chinks on that side, which creates a vacuum inside, which sucks the air in from the windward side.
Well,
so you get air changes all day long. You reduce that.
Well, we have propane now for here.
Oh, yeah.
So we just run a line over there.
Run a
You
line
could.
in, where it's just augmenting the main system, it should be more than effective for an area that size. I've done a few installs for Down East Energy and Weather Fuels.
That's a suggestion.
Yeah.
But it saves the town a ton of money. Can we stand to look at another one of those over there? Well, you know, I'm not going to get into that. That's not my purpose, just quantify. I want to quantify stuff, but basically those 3 items, the ceiling, the foundation, the wall, and the floor flooring, got to be done.
All right.
After that.
Let's move on from there. That's good, very good. You gave us very good information.
Thanks. Sorry if I was too verbose.
No, not at all. We're all set with that. The school, the townhouse.
I'm not done with the schoolhouse, I just had a question.
All right.
How is the schoolhouse attached to the townhouse? Is it?
I didn't really look at that. It's probably nailed on somewhere. I mean, that might have to be reinforced. I don't know. But that's, you know.
I mean, if it's removed, can it be safely removed without damaging the townhouse?
Well, there are ways to do that, sure. Yeah, because it was obviously put there, so it's done in some superficial way. It wasn't, I'm sure, bolted with, it could be bolted, but then if it is, you take the bolts out.
Each building has its own gable end.
Yeah.
2 gable ends are put together like this.
So it's not working against each other?
All right, go to the townhouse.
Yeah, that's another story. Well, there's a lot of stuff there. We're not obligated to move the electrical service, be it a good idea perhaps. The building doesn't have to change. We're our own enforcement body in the town, and it's not really going to kill anybody being over there near the refrigerator. I mean, generally speaking, when they enforce codes, it's the local building inspector that comes in and they got to build this to code. Old buildings are exempt to a certain degree. Code violations don't necessarily mean dangerous, they just mean today's code violation, you know. The Uniform Building Code, the International Building Code. You violate all buildings that are 10 years or older violate the building code today. So, and that's not something I would worry too much about.
You agree? I agree. Okay.
There's a lot of stuff in there that could be discussed. The biggest problem is falling plaster that I see. As far as the foundation of that goes, that should have been dug down a little deeper and concrete poured down, not just against the blocks, but should have been dug inside and poured down a little deeper against the rubble that makes up the foundation for the granite blocks. That's why they tipped, the rubble moved, you know, the building was built there so years ago. But it wasn't done, so it's okay the way it is now. Probably isn't gonna move, but that's why we get the big cracks now. They jack things back and around, now we got cracks in the corners and that, and they're not doing anything. But that happened when they fix the building. Stuff happens. The plaster, boy, what a deal that is. If the town wants to fix the plaster, what extent do they want to go to? I know tons of ways to take care of that. One system was created specifically for that. It's the only one in the industry that I know of. And it's a special epoxy compound that small holes are drilled through the plaster, and this stuff is pumped between the plaster and the lath. Because what has happened is, you know what everybody know what plaster keys are? Plaster keys? Plaster. You got lath. Here's the edge view of a piece of lath. It's nailed up to a bunch of 2x somethings, whatever that building was. They trowel the plaster on it, it oozes up and over the edge of these things, and those are called the plastic keys to keep it from falling off. They break, they go away, the plaster gets loose and starts to fall. So they drill a hole now, they have a system they made just for this purpose, to save old buildings historically. And you get a gun and they got the equipment, and you squirt this epoxy in and it bonds that plaster to the lath. Now that's great if the lath is good. If the lath's not really bonded to the timbers well, you've done nothing for yourself. So there's a system for taking care of that problem, which means you got to drill a 1/4-inch hole in not every piece of lath. I can't give it to you off the top of my head, but I was reading the text sheet on it. Every so many pieces of lath, because they'll carry other pieces of lath. And you put a screw into the timber through the lath, this little 1/4-inch hole, and you're going to plaster that up again later, because if you want to save it, that's the way you do it. Now the lath is screwed on good, and you can use that same 1/4-inch hole to pump epoxy in. But you're still going to be drilling a lot of holes. Now that's a very labor-intensive process. You don't have to put rocket science on it, but it's labor-intensive because somebody's up there doing this. Maybe you don't want to do it to the whole thing just where the plaster's real bad, but if you do it to the whole thing, there's a system to make it happen that costs less money than buying staging rental for a month, because you're going to be up there for a while, which would cost you approximately $5,000 to rent enough staging to run that place for a month. Because you got to get up there, and you got to work, and you got to work safe, and you got to have the ability to have tools and this and that up there. Instead, what I always do when I put up, especially an expensive house, is I build a false floor right inside the building out of 2x10s and studs, put them on blankets. They're not nailed to anything, and there's this big floor sitting wherever you want it throughout the whole building. And it sits there, it costs about $400 for that building in framing lumber to make this temporary floor that sits in the townhouse. And you go up on this floor and you do all your work, you're up there for 3 weeks, take it down, you get $400 worth of lumber instead of $4,000 worth of, and you've got a floor up there on ladders, you're working comfortably. We do it in houses all the time. We have big high cathedrals, 25 feet in the air, rent staging for $3,000 or build a false floor for $300 or $400. That's what we do. And then we go up and work, then take it all down when it's done. Plus you don't drop stuff through the staging and smash the hardwood floor down below, because you're sitting on a cheap OSB, which is that strand board, that cheap stuff. Anyway, that's the system. If you want to get up there and do that, I would recommend that. Now anybody that's going to do any restorations can get up there and work without damaging anything in the place and fix all that plaster. And the painters can come and paint and stencil it from that same floor, which reduces their time by 50%. They're not going to be on ladders, on temporary stuff. Anyway, that's, you know, a way to get it done. Yes?
So the only thing I will say is that, speaking for myself, I am not in favor of doing a Bondo or epoxy type system to repair that plaster.
What do you want to do?
I would like permission for the Heritage Commission to look into other ways to repair the plaster in that building before we do it.
There's one other way. Take it down and replaster. I mean, you can do
I think
that.
there are other options, and I'd like to look into them.
You can look, but
You
they're
don't need
not.
his permission.
You won't find them.
Okay, that's fine.
I've looked.
All right,
Okay.
we're beyond the plaster. What else do we have? Heat. How do we, what's your thoughts on heating that part of the building? Assuming at the moment that the back had one of these guys, units, how would you heat the front? Considering the historical nature of the building.
Well, do you want to blow insulation into the walls? I don't even know if there's a wall cavity there. There may not be.
There is, I believe there is.
Okay, there may not be. Sometimes those buildings are built without wall cavities. Or the studs that they use and the way they built were put flat. And there's only that much of a cavity between the plaster inside. I can figure that out though. And then you gotta pull a piece of siding off someplace, drill a hole in the, whatever they've got for a sheathing that the siding's nailed to. I'm sure there's a big wide board, and put insulation in the wall. It may not be there.
What, what type of heating are you, what are the options for a heating unit?
Well, there's so many different ones available. LP has only got 85% of the BTUs that's in a gallon of oil, but there are no oil-fired units that are 98% efficient, or 96, 98. Plenty of LP ones out, so it's a wash. What's more efficient? So what do you want to burn? Oil or gas? I mean, I like gas personally. It's cleaner. The equipment requires servicing far less often. You don't have an oil tank to deal with, whether it's buried or above ground. You've got a propane tank in the ground. So, dollar per dollar, you're going to have to burn something, and it probably isn't going to be a whole lot different one than the other, given the insulation values of the building.
And it's going to be, what would you recommend, continuing with the hot air since we have all the ductwork there, or is there other things, again, considering historical value of the
Hot air is nice because it doesn't freeze.
When you have it there, the cost of a hot air furnace replacement is going to be at least $4,000 for a complete replacement. I just replaced one in my mother's house.
Well, the ductwork's already in.
The ductwork's there, but you have to fabricate the match because it's not going to be an exact match.
What's it cost?
From current.
$225,000, Steve. What's it cost? Of the boiler, for furnace.
Just hot force.
Get any idea?
Natural gas or LP.
Probably $250,000, so anyway. I don't know, we have to get the prices on those things. I always look at all the possibilities, price them all out. If you're gonna use the ductwork, which is already there, which, I mean, it's kind of silly to reinvent the wheel. I mean, you won't force hot water ever.
questions?
If you go to gas in the schoolhouse and gas in the townhouse, you're using gas here,
You need another tank.
you need another tank.
Yep. But they're free. It costs any money.
Well-
How big is the one we have?
We own ours, that's.
The town owns their tank.
We own 1,000-gallon
It's a 1,000-gallon
tank,
tank.
and it was $2,500.
No, it's free. It's free. I don't know why you paid. Rhymes, for instance, right, well, here's how it works, because I haven't put in all the time. I just had one put in the last house I'm building. The gas company gives you the tank. They don't charge you, even a burial tank, even one buried.
No, you can own an underground tank. An
Why would you
above
wanna
ground-
own it?
No, you can. Any homeowner, any business corporation can own a tank. If it's an above-ground tank, it's owned specifically by the company.
No,
who's
let me
filling it,
explain.
and cannot be touched by any other company.
I do this all the time.
I've done delivery for a few years.
That's not how it works today. This is how all the gas companies are working it. This is how it is. They give you a tank, no charge. You gotta bury it for them. They're not gonna come and dig it in the ground. The tank shows up, they set it in the ground for you, they come and hook everything up. They run the line, you can run the line to the house actually, but it has to be done by code. Now the tank costs them $2,000 to $5,000, depending on the size, could be 2,000-gallon tank. They put it in, and they don't charge you for it. They give you the tank. Now it's buried in the ground, and they sign a contract with you that doesn't require you to stay with them a year. Now here's how all the gas companies are working that, all of them, every one of them. If you decide you want to change gas company after 6 months because you don't like them, for instance, you had Rhymes and you want to go to Eastern, they have an amortization schedule on that tank, 5 years probably, because that's what they told me for this tank. So the amortization schedule for 5 years, they're incorporating into the price of propane. if the next company takes it, they already have agreements, all these gas companies, to pay the company that they're taking the account from for the tank. And then they pick up the amortization schedule on a prorated basis. In other words, if the tank costs $2,000 and it were in half the amortization time, then they would give $1,000 to the company that they took the account from, and that company would then not care one way or the other. And that's how they're all working. What doesn't do that way?
I don't know about underground tanks. Above ground tanks, yes.
No, that's underground
They
tanks.
swap it instead of swapping out 1,000-gallon tanks.
They don't swap them out, Jim.
A private entity can buy an underground tank and own it.
All right,
why would
we need to go on.
It's free, you get it for nothing, why would you buy one?
We can go on.
You buy one because if you have your own tank, you can pay a lot less for gas, a lot less. You can not only shop, but you say, I got one own tank, they're gonna sell you the gas for less.
I can show you my delivery thing. I give Rhymes a lot of business. I pay for, right now for propane, I pay $1.69.
But what you're saying is the 1,000-gallon tank would not be enough to heat this building
No.
and those two buildings?
No, that building would require a 1,000-gallon tank of its own.
Okay.
Just so you don't run out.
All right. For where, anybody else have questions on this? So you're saying that in your thought, keep the hot air system that they have there, some redoing the ductwork, location of a unit.
You know, I haven't thought all those things out yet. It is where it is. The trunk lines go where they go. The ductwork goes where they go. Why would you want to move it and spend money to do so? It's in a place that's not a problem. I don't see why it doesn't work. But I haven't looked at the mechanical stuff over there. I can't speak off the cuff on an evaluation. You got to look at it and think about it for a while. I mean, I just took this on Saturday.
So, if you were going to put a handicapped bathroom in there, where would you put it? With a shower?
Well,
one handicapped bathroom.
In a regular?
Unisex and a shower.
Well, this is what I would do. I sit down and put a floor plan of the building together and draw it on paper. Whenever I design a building for somebody, I design it in my head, sort of. But when you're doing it on paper, you can make everything fit to accommodate handicap and code requirements. I mean, you have certain spaces to do that. And I'd have to get the measurements of that, and where would you want to put it? I mean, up the front isn't such a bad idea because there's plumbing up there anyway from the kitchen, and today's PEXs won't burst when frozen. So that's not such a bad idea, and I'd probably put a water heater in the bathroom itself, like this one here, so you don't have to run hot and cold from a heat source way in the back of the building. You know, like this is its own, yeah. So it could either go up in the front, if there's enough room, and I don't know that there is, or it could go in the back. I mean, you might have to restructure those partition walls that are back there. I mean, depends on what the druthers are, you know. Do you want to
How
have
would
it
depend if you kept the schoolhouse too?
I could draw that, and I would draw that. I'll do it for the town for free. I'm not gonna charge them.
The existing bathroom is actually in the schoolhouse.
Yeah,
Right.
see,
And
that's
the
the real
existing-
wild card here is
The
really-
existing oil burner is in the schoolhouse.
Yep.
So if you eliminate the schoolhouse, you do have to do something
Brian,
about it.
jump in.
Oh, because that to me is the wild card. Is the schoolhouse going to stay? And is it worth our money and time, or should we focus our money and time to the townhouse? That's the equation of the way up. If we jettison the schoolhouse, we need to rethink our priorities and how we would structure our furnace, our bathrooms, that's I think one of the first hurdles we need to overcome right now.
I was just going to comment that Salmon Falls Architecture had a recommendation that we expand the men's room into the schoolhouse.
Yes.
Again, this
It is.
preserves our,
Oh, further.
right,
Further.
expand it further, and you would have room for handicapped access and shower. Keep the furnace room where it's at. Why? Because all the ductwork's there. And then I think the ladies or the other bathroom needs more space. It's also a little small. I haven't looked at that part, but I thought their plan was pretty good because we're not getting into the integrity of the townhouse.
That's right, but the only issue I see with it, Ernie, is that That men's bathroom is where the pipes freeze almost every year.
Oh,
And
that's,
so, because they're so close to the wall. So in my mind, why not do something with that space? But I had thought it might be better to put the handicap bathroom in where the units are now, the heating and water heater and stuff. Because that room is definitely large enough, Gary, for a handicapped accessible bathroom. The only thing you'd have to do is enlarge the doorway.
That's
And
true.
The shower.
Whereas if you take everything up to the front, you're really gonna have to change that front of the townhouse. You're gonna have to enlarge that door. Something's gonna have to be done to take down that wall, do something with the safe, which is neither here nor there, but then do all the extra work.
I wasn't suggesting it, I just heard
No.
that. It's
Yes, no,
somebody's idea.
it was one of the things that has been suggested.
We've got 20 minutes left. We're going to be done by 8:30.
There's another item.
So I heard we have to get some ideas on the furnace, and I don't know who's gonna work that. And we got 2 proposals on bathrooms, one up front, one in back. We should lay them out and quantify those also.
Can I say this?
Sure.
Okay. You're gonna make a decision whether you're gonna save the schoolhouse or throw it away. If you throw it away, you don't have any place for anything anymore. You got a problem. Your bathrooms and your furnace room are gone because he decided we're gonna demolish that. I got a guy coming to give us a price on that too. Eddie's given us one. You should always have a couple. Especially
Give
if
us a
something
price
like
on
that.
what?
Demolition of the
Oh,
schoolhouse.
demolition, okay, I'm sorry.
However, if you demolish the schoolhouse, there's no place for the furnace and the bathrooms anymore. It's done.
Right.
But we still have to quantify as part of that equation.
No, I understand, but here's what suggestion I'm saying. As you consider as part of the demolition for the schoolhouse, consider putting a small addition on the back of the town hall as part of the price of demolition, because you're going to have to do that to house the facilities.
Right.
And because you can't put them in the rest of the building, you're done. So you're going to have to figure that into the equation. If you don't save the schoolhouse and you throw it away, you're going to build something to house the furnace, the boiler, you build whatever you want. I mean, 10 feet out, 12 feet out, whatever it takes across the back of the schoolhouse. You can make it aesthetically pleasing. It doesn't have to look like a chicken coop. So, I mean, but that's part of it.
But that's another item that has to be costed then.
Or, no, I can tell you what that's going to cost.
Okay, that's going to be your homework.
I had a question about the shower. What was the reasoning for a shower in a part-time use facility?
Because that's also the emergency, that building is our emergency shelter in case of.
Shelter.
Yep. So, actually, it was Bill's idea after Salmon Falls did the report, and I thought it was an excellent one, and I think we really need to.
It's not a real go to Tom's house and take showers. It's one of yours. I won't charge much.
Maybe get my solar hooked up.
It's probably been addressed before, but anybody ever look into this, whatever the additions they did to the schoolhouse as far as asbestos or lead paint?
No, it's gotta have lead paint, and it probably has asbestos, wouldn't you think?
I don't know where it would have asbestos, but it
It would
probably
have to be
has lead
something
paint.
they added on, but the lead paint is probably, I don't know if that's.
It's not a problem.
It's
What
not a
about that
problem
one,
with
sir?
demolition as far as.
Could that maybe not have,
No.
Home Stove doesn't have any.
wouldn't have anything, it wouldn't have anything?
No, oil-based paint isn't such a problem for disposal. Asbestos is special disposal, double wrap with a special container for it.
You're on.
And thousands per ton.
On the heating system, you haven't mentioned anything on your heat pump theory. Or when I was first exposed to heat pumps, it was about 25 years ago. And the further north you could install a heat pump. What it is it's an air conditioner that reverses itself for the winter and produces heat instead of coolness. So you could use a heat pump. But now they've improved the technology of them where they're installing heat pumps in houses in this latitude. So you're looking at a unit, 2 units basically, an air handler in the basement or in a crawl space using your existing ductwork and a compressor outside the building. And the compressor would be maybe 5 feet by 3 feet by 2 feet. And you could plant 2 trees in front of it.
How many BTUs can you get? How many want to put out?
Whatever you want. you
Well, it
size
depends
you
on the
size
average agreed
You
to.
size it for the building,
Right.
so I can't give you an arbitrary number.
But no, I guess I asked the question wrong. In your experience, what's a 250,000 BTU heat pump gonna go for? And will it to this, well, our average degree day is 37.2 right now, I think. What's its efficiency at 37.2 average degree day? I don't know.
The efficiency is pretty near 95%.
Well, that's good.
You're using electricity, for one. Secondly, if you get some extreme cold, what you do have inside the ductwork is auxiliary heaters that come on with a two-stage thermostat in the building. So if you set it at, say, 60, and the temperature drops to 50, and the heat pump is working at full volume, then the auxiliary heaters kick in to make up the difference. So maintenance-wise, it's very economical, very little maintenance.
What powers it? Is this electric?
Electric.
It's all electric, and they're now efficient down to about 5 below.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've got the data at home. I can give you the specs on, because they have units, a single unit will handle like 3 rooms.
Right.
So.
Well, you just got to do a heat loss
And
gain.
the access from the outside unit to the inside is a hole about that big.
How much electricity do they, like, we talking like, same as like a central air?
They're looking at them.
It's, yeah, basically the same as a central air
So our generator would be able to handle
But
that?
you would have, 2 pluses with this.
Yeah.
You have your heat for the winter, plus in the summer,
You can reverse.
you could use the air conditioning and basically dehumidify the building if you didn't want to bring it down to 60 degrees. You could keep it at 80 inside, but you can drop the humidity by that aspect. And that alone would, well, all your preservation stuff is in climate-controlled rooms, so now you have a climate-controlled building. And it's about a third more than a conventional, quote, heating system to install.
You would have to be prepared to
Okay,
pay
that's
for
what I was
the
gonna ask.
auxiliary
It's
electric
about a
heat in the
third
wintertime.
more. But
Supplemental.
depending on what you do for insulation, you can get kickbacks from the power company by using these because they're pushing them. They're supposed to be, because of their efficiency.
Well, a BTU is a BTU is a BTU, so
Right.
whatever they got over there now is it's handling the job at 265,000, I don't remember, it's in the report. So you'd have to be comparable in
Are these
size.
similar to the ones that you have on ceilings? Sometimes you see these ones in buildings. It's
Yeah.
the same theory, or?
It's the same theory. Yeah, those are split systems, where you have your compressor mounted outside on a pad, and then all your pipes run up the side of the building, or, through a cavity in the wall. And then you have just a air handler on the inside with a small squirrel cage motor. Those are designed basically for retrofits, and that's the nice part about them. They never usually design things for retrofits, but these were. But on a system like this, it can be installed with minimal effect to the aesthetics of the building and structurally, providing the ductwork is adequate for it.
Ernie, you mentioned, backup source of heat, somebody mentioned.
Well, Steve mentioned it. When it gets really cold, you are going to burn additional electricity. You have to understand that in the winter.
Well, yeah, the compressor will be rated at one level. And then as the temperature continues to drop for any length of time, then you have a resistance heater. It's just like a baseboard heater. You have resistance heaters which are set up inside the ductwork.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Okay. That's all stuff we can explore, different kinds of heat. I don't think we're cemented into anything at the moment, but there is, your suggestion about the handicap bathroom being in a furnace room, get something like that, and that really works well, because the furnace room will then be empty. We're gonna have another bathroom with it someplace else, a unisex or whatever, I don't know. those are the things that have to be determined, and I think this would be a good idea, I'm gonna suggest it, and I think the planning board would be perfectly willing to work with you guys and generate it as a town official document and do a mailing. Not too many things, but get all the productive things that the people that are sitting here suggest. Would you like this there? How does this, and there's one idea. Here's another idea, would you like this on a fill in a block thing, self-addressed stamped envelope back to the town, make it an official document and make it perfectly clear, this is going to affect your tax picture, please respond.
I think people would want to see a number in order to make that decision.
Well, we can do that. We can quantify things and say, whatever you do, it's gonna cost this to fix the building, and that, if we fix the building, this will fix. Now, the bathroom will cost this. If we do it, if we make a small bathroom without handicap shower, it will cost this. It's not gonna be that much more. Just the space is a little bigger. I mean, it depends on what kind of Italian marble you wanna put in it, I guess.
Yeah.
Nobody's talked about windows in both buildings.
One of the future plans.
There's ideas for that.
Yeah, one of the future plans would be to, and I'm not sure replace is the appropriate word, but to make sure the windows are more efficient, I guess, is what I would say, than they are now.
Repair.
One of the options on a seasonal basis is to go with an inside storm, which is quite doable, and then in the summer you can take it off.
Yeah, but the windows in the schoolhouse are falling apart now.
Yes, they are.
No, I'm talking about
the townhouse.
Well,
Gary,
are those good windows?
What would you guess a window, a new unit put in the schoolhouse would cost? Rough top of your head.
It depends on what kind of unit you want. There's companies that make sashes. So you got a framework. That's what's, it depends on the framework. I really didn't inspect that. I'd have to go look. Is the framework good? You can put a sash in that looks old, depends on which way you want to run your muttons, up, down, across. I have to go look. I don't know that. But I can tell you price of windows. If you want a good, well-built vinyl replacement window, I mean, there again, you're addressing this, the efficacy of, the historical business. I mean, there's so
It's not
many.
really the case of the schoolhouse. It's not historic in one sense. It's not
Well, I'm not going to make that decision. I can give you a price real
We
quick.
have more leeway with the schoolhouse. Yeah.
And we can also buy a sash, any size you want, very inexpensively, thermal pane, which is what I would suggest. I mean, to be historically, you have to be single pane with divided line muttons in it, but, I don't know that we want to go there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I can give you prices on windows off the top of my head, because I always quantify. It's not a problem.
Oh, we have 5 minutes to wrap up where we are and decide what we're going to do.
Question, I thought Brian brought up with the air pump. Heat pump. Any idea if the backup generator that we have would be efficient enough to run that in an emergency situation, where you'd be running other things too, not just the heat? It's what, a 10,000 that we've got?
It would be pretty close. Be pretty close.
Yeah.
They usually run, your compressor would be running at, in the 30 amp range.
Okay.
And your air handler would be 10 to 15 or less.
Well, it probably would, as long as it didn't run a lot of other stuff.
Oh, but when you're dealing with a heating system, it's the same, you're having alternating load.
Yeah.
It'll come on for a while, and then it'll shut off, and then it'll come on again. So you have alternating loads.
Would you like to construct that mailer with the planning board?
So, I don't mind doing the mailer. At one point, we had talked about trying to get something out with the next tax mailing, but I think that's too short a deadline.
When's the tax mailing?
May 31st.
May, yeah.
Not to put numbers down. I can get the numbers by then.
So I think, in my mind, the next step would be for you to put numbers to what you're suggesting tonight, And I think, especially with regard to the schoolhouse, And I think with those numbers, then possibly a mailing to try to determine, does the town want to keep the schoolhouse? But in those numbers, you need to include, if we blow the schoolhouse away, we have to then build bathrooms, stuff.
Something on the back.
Something on the back.
We need like a handful of scenarios if we're doing something like this mailing. We need,
yes.
You know, some kind of, because we can't keep going, well, do you want the bathroom here or there?
Right.
We have to present pictures of the different options that we have.
So I think the first thing is for Gary to come up with that, and then with those numbers. I think those numbers are key to where we go from there.
I'll do that, and I can also help create the scenarios. You know, one from column A, one from column B, that kind of thing, where you can say, these are the things that can be done, and these are the approximate, these are the costs of the concrete stuff. I can't give you the cost of a bathroom. I can tell you what the plumbing, Steve can tell you what the plumbing fixtures are going to cost. I mean, it's X number of dollars per fixture. And then you have the stuff that you put the fixture on. So 2 bathrooms are going to cost you X, 1 bathroom is going to cost you X, depending on how many fixtures are in it, what you want to accomplish. The floor plan is basically framing, lumber, and sheetrock.
So it's not clear to me what you're gonna cost out. I know the stuff in the schoolhouse, that's clear, that was pretty clear.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'll tell you, I'm going to cost out the price of fixing all the stuff in the schoolhouse.
Yep.
I've got people coming to give, Eddie's already, I didn't know that Eddie was going to do demolition, but great. Somebody else, Baldwin Excavation's coming to give us a quote.
Okay.
On what it would take to get that schoolhouse out of here. And then, based on design, I will give you what it would cost to put a shell up there. I mean, he's going to get rid of the foundation too. The block goes. So you'd have to put a new foundation in. We're going to have to build something that's going to house a couple of bathrooms and any of the utilities that we want to house back there. So we're talking about probably going up 10 or 12 feet across the back of the building. Okay. Depending on what else you want to do there.
Okay. Get the tables, someplace to put those tables.
Well, you might go out 15 feet, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just say you got to put bathrooms, and you have, I don't know if we need a utility room now. Do we need a utility room?
Depends on the scenario.
Not for the heat pump, but I can tell you what it will cost. So you're 12 by the width of this on the back.
Now, how about a bathroom in Virginia's old office, because that keeps coming around. How much would it cost to put the fixtures in there? If the fixtures are the same, whether they're in the back or the front, then it's just the structural work.
If you want to put a non-handicap bathroom up front.
I understand, but that...
A handicap. Where we put it will be handicap.
Oh, you're going to put one bathroom in?
Quantified, people say, put it up
then you're going to change the doorway and everything up front.
Well, you got to change the doorway from the back to the great room, because that's too small. So you're going to change that doorway or that doorway.
Yeah.
All right, if you can explore the 2 of those, when are we going to meet again?
What about the heat? Who's doing the heat?
Can I just make a comment? The Wakefield Heritage Commission just placed a Mitsubishi heat pump in the freight house in Union. 20 by 50 with 10-foot ceilings, and it was $9,000. And it's set at 63, and you walk in there, it feels like it's 70. It's 63 constantly.
That's what you're insulated and all?
It's a heat pump.
Heat pump, oh, okay.
What I'm trying to do is make sure we're getting everything.
Oh, no, I understand.
Are we missing anything else that we should try to quantify?
One last thing, the handicap ramp. Is that
would be part of the new business. You'd have to bring it up to that.
Okay, so
you've got to have an exit door back there by code anyway.
All right, so that was just one other action item. I think we need to.
So we're trying.
We need to figure out if we get rid of the schoolhouse, that would need to be a whole new ramp that would need to be put in, right?
Yes, we have to have it.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to do is make a list that's complete, so we don't have to keep adding stuff to the list.
That's why I think Rose's suggestion is spot on, because once you get all these action items in place, you can move these cards around and say, if we go with plan A through Z, they are all different items, and these would be the gross cost. You know, and we could even prioritize the buckets. These are critical items, and if we're gonna keep the schoolhouse, we get rid of the schoolhouse, and this now becomes a non-critical item, but now what will take place is a new critical item, which is building a 10-foot section on the back, right? Is that where you were going with that? That's,
Yeah, I agree.
you know, so there can be multiple.
All right, it's 8:30, we're gonna be done here. Thank you, Gary. Thank everybody for their input and everything else. When do we meet again? We just need a couple people to meet again. How do you want to do this?
I don't care when, except that I've got a staggering amount of work to get done. I told that to you before. I'm not going to get on this for a couple of weeks. I just
Okay,
can't
no,
do it.
that's,
I would, but I just can't. I have to do what I have to do, and that's the way it is. And after that, I will devote the time, and I won't procrastinate, and I won't jerk the town around. Haven't done it before, won't start now.
okay. Any thoughts on when to meet again? We're certainly not going to do it next week, 2 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now. We make
So
the
the
newsletter,
next-
we make the newsletter. If not, we'll do a separate mailing. It's not that.
So the next Heritage Commission meeting is the second Wednesday of the month. Yeah. Would that be enough time for you? We're at the
Of what month?
May.
He said he needs 2 weeks before he starts.
Let me put it to you,
That
okay.
gives him more than 2 weeks.
And 2 weeks before he starts is May 1st.
Yeah, let me
Okay,
put it
that
to you
gives
this
him a
way.
week.
When I get done what I've got to get done, and I have no choice, I have to do what I have to do. When I get it done,
We all do.
when I get it done, then I will devote time to this. I'm going to put together a prospectus with all these different alternatives, and you'll see, it'll look good. I do this a lot for people when I want to develop things. So I put prospectuses together. I know exactly what everybody wants. I'm going to do it. I just won't be able to do the meat work of it for a while, just because I can't do it. I wish I could. I wish I had a lot of free time.
Okay, we understand.
We should meet at least 2 weeks before the newsletter has to go out to give the committee, whoever's working on it, a chance to say this is what we want to do and get it done and printed for the tax bills.
Next meeting will be the Historical Society.
Heritage Commission
Heritage,
meeting.
I'm sorry.
I'm dancing with the Fed.
The
right?
8th.
The 8th.
You want to do the 8th, or do you want to do like a week after that to give him a?
No, we'll just meet, we could also meet the week after.
Oh, right.
You can meet now, and then if it's close, I'll meet then, and I'll come whenever you
Next
want.
meeting's
A week later, I don't
the
care.
8th, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
All right?
I'll be here. Good.
We're gonna do it in a circle to confuse that again.
I have checks for the.
We will keep them guessing, yes.
Let me suggest, if you're going to send out a questionnaire, the best thing to do is to send that separate, not with the tax bill. I would say, my suggestion would be to put something, if we have a newsletter this time, to put something in the newsletter saying there is going to be a mailing with a questionnaire. So you have that in the newsletter, but the newsletter goes out separately.
And it buys us time, it doesn't give us that time.
The questionnaire goes out
Yeah.
separately.
The questionnaire goes out separately.
Psychologically, when it goes with the tax bill, may not be good.
Well, if there's too
That's
much
true.
crap in the envelope,
It's
people
gonna be
aren't
too
gonna
heavy.
read it.
That's true.
Then it'll be too heavy.
All right, thank you everybody
Yeah, no,
for coming. I appreciate your taking the time, and hopefully, I think we're making some progress here. And I thank Gary for his presentation. You did a good job.
Well, this isn't hard stuff, Bill.
Well,
This is tiny little tiny projects. believe me.
you have perfect minutes, right?
I will.